Have you ever wondered what your pastor was thinking on Monday? I can tell you two things that he was thinking. Number one is, why did I say that yesterday? And the second thing is he's asking or she's asking, what do I need to say next Sunday? And there's that roller coaster ride that every pastor has to go through. And today I want to talk to you pastors in particular, or those that are teaching and preaching ministers in your local church or in a local ministry there in your church. I want to help you to process the answer to what do I need to preach or teach about next Sunday. It's hugely important, a question that has to be answered. And so let's just jump in. The tendency, if we're not careful, is to preach or teach on what is the most urgent and the most current. And so whatever is going on around us, whatever we're passionate about, whatever we're afraid or worried about, and I know we shouldn't be afraid or worried, but concerned, maybe that'll make you happier. But those urgent things that are pressing in on us, the headlines, what the talking heads on the news channel are hammering down, if we're not careful, we will allow the culture to shape our messages. Now, let me be clear. There are times to do that. Martin Luther, back in the days of the Reformation, he dealt with one of the most urgent issues of his day, and that's the selling of indulgence. If you'll pay me enough, I will ensure that your sins are forgiven. Well, of course, we know that's a horrible heresy. It needed to be dealt with, and to not deal with the issues of our day, to be silent about them, is to surrender. And so I'm not saying to not talk about the cultural issues that are going on around us or the events that are going on around us. I remember 9/11, when that horrible incident happened. Of all things, I was conducting a revival at my local church, and I had a different speaker every night. And but on the night that 9/11 happened, we had a service planned, and we went on. I figured if there's ever a time that people need to gather at the house of the Lord, it will be tonight. And the place was packed, and I talked to the speaker that was scheduled. I said, I want you to please forgive me, but I feel like the people need to hear from their pastor tonight. I need to deal with this. And so the whole service was focused around that urgent issue. And so the point is, there are times that you say, time out, away from this series or what I've been talking about lately, and this is of such urgency that I need to talk about it. Are there such overwhelming things going on in our culture around us that on a regular basis you've got to help guide your people? So I get it. But the point is, don't allow the urgent, whether it's urgent to you or urgent to your people or urgent to the culture, don't allow the urgent to rule you. What you want to have to rule you is to help your people to develop a Christian worldview. You want them to think like Christians so that they can live like Christians. The urgent headlines of the day are going to change. They're going to change by the day, they're going to change by the year, they're going to change by the decade. But Christianity is about a lifestyle for the long haul. And so I want to encourage you to think in those lines. Am I helping my people to think like Christians so that they can be aware of what's going on around them, see it through the lens of a Christian, and be able to respond and act accordingly? I'll give you a couple examples. Some say that what some refer to as the sexual revolution. Can you imagine the things that we're dealing with today that in 1950, 1960, we would have never dreamed? When I was a boy just growing up, we'd have never dreamed. But in the 1960s, things began to shift. And some say that one of the reasons of the beginning of the moral decline in America was not when they took prayer out of school or maybe approved abortion or some of the big ticket items, but was when, without a whimper, hardly without a whimper, the church just rolled over when no-fault divorce became the norm of the day. And that began the breakdown of the family. And it became not about a Christian worldview of the family. I am married. My marriage represents, the man represents Christ, and the woman represents the bride of Christ, the church, and the way they interact is a testimony, is a living parable to their children and to the culture around them. But we made marriage about my comfort, about my happiness. It's not he or she's not meeting my needs anymore. And it just started this downward slide where it all became about ourselves and our personal happiness. And so Christians were not thinking like Christians. And so we did not have a response to the world, and the world came in. And now most Christians, they look at marriage and the same way as non-Christians. And so there's you an example, a lot of the cultural things that's going on right now with the gender issues and all of that. It's the Christian worldview is not being promoted. It is not being defended. And our people are not thinking like Christians because they haven't been taught necessarily about the image of God. We are made in the image of God. That is a Christian worldview. I am made by my Creator. Therefore, I am made for a purpose. I am designed the way I am because my Creator made me. I can't change what the Creator, this mug, if it was a sentient being, somebody made this for a purpose that I really appreciate. Still got a little bit of coffee in it now. And so this mug, if it was a sentient being, doesn't have the right to say, well, I don't want to be a mug. I don't want to have coffee. I am a race car trapped in a, Yeti mug or whatever this is. I don't know what it is. It's got Yeti on it. No, this is a Yeti mug. It was made for a purpose by a Creator, and our Creator made us. He made us the way we are. He made us for a purpose, and not only that, but we are accountable to the Creator. But when we don't think like that, then we can choose and pick and choose, and that's how we arrive to the day we're in today, because the world definitely does not understand natural theology, the way the Creator made us, the image of God that we're all made. And so the whole issue of abortion, our sexual identity, the way men and women interact with one another, how they see themselves, maleness, femaleness, we can deal with those specific issues. But if you want to get to the root of the issue is that we need to see the world through the lens of Christian theology, of Christian doctrine, that we're made in the image of God. And when we get that nailed down, when we get our mind around that, then so this is what's going on. And Satan hates the image of God, and he'll do anything he can to destroy that. And so that's behind all this. And when we think that way, our people see it that way, then we've got a chance. We can help equip our people. So the key is, don't let the urgent, don't let the popular, don't let what's on the front lines or the front page, don't let that dictate what you preach about. But let's preach about what is most appropriate to help our people see life through the lens of Christianity, to have a Christian worldview. You say, well, where can I get my sources for that? How can I get on track with that? Well, there's a couple different ways. One, I've got matter of fact, it's my daughter's pastor. I don't know if these people even are aware of this, but especially on Wednesday night, has a wonderful Bible study, and he's taken a systematic theology book, a good, solid systematic theology, and is systematically taking his people through the major doctrines of the Bible. And as he's doing that, then it's just natural to make applications, just like all of the Pauline epistles, or all the epistles in the Bible. They dealt with theology, and then in the back part of the book, of each one of those books, then they gave practical applications. When you get your theology down, when you get your doctrine down, then the applications become self-apparent. And so you've probably got a good introduction to theology right on your bookshelves that you had to take maybe in a college course or through your ministerial credentialing, or some good systematic theology books. Those big books that we never open them and begin to systematically just teach your people and preach to your people. And then another way, probably even more potent in some ways, but that's just to systematically preach through the Bible. Pick a book and stay with it for a while. I remember years ago when I really began to take this to heart. I remember before this, week after week, I'd get up on Monday and all week long, oh God, what do I need to preach? And I'm over here and then I'm over there and I'm up here. I am just popcorn preaching, just whatever pops up in my mind. And sometimes it would even be Sunday morning, early morning. I'm sweating bullets trying to figure out what to preach. My heart was in the right place, but I wasn't taking my people anywhere. They were just coming, and I'd have a spray gun and spray them down with something this week, spray them down with something next week. But I remember F.J. May, great pastor and later an educator in the Church of God. I remember I think it was a prayer conference. Our overseer at that time brought him in, or some kind of conference, and he shared. He was pastoring at the time, and he says, I had some real moral issues, some infidelity kind of things, and just several things he mentioned. He says, and I knew if I got up in the pulpit and dealt with those things specifically at this particular moment, that everybody in the church would know that I was talking about a particular person, and I didn't want to hurt them. I didn't want to do more damage than I did good. He says, so what I did is I began to preach through 1 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians. He said, I just systematically preached to them. And eventually I got to these issues, and it was natural. It was appropriate. Nobody thought I was picking on anybody, and I was just laying down precept upon precept. And little by little, he changed his church. And I practiced that for many years. It's a wonderful way just to systematically preach the Bible. And of course, there'll be times that maybe during Christmas, during Easter, or a 9/11, whatever, some major issue, you say, time out, we're going to get back to this next Sunday, but I need to deal with this important and even urgent matter. But week after week and year after year, Pastor, that's the privilege you've got, is to lay down principle, precept, just one right after another, building your people, helping them to look through the lens of Christianity, to think like Christians so that they can respond like Christians and live accordingly. And so I want to close with this, just two thoughts, two questions to ask yourself each week. First of all, answer the question, and I know this sounds, to people that are not familiar with this, and maybe even people that are, it sounds so spiritual or esoteric or whatever, but answer this question. What does God want me to preach right now? On this Sunday, during this season, where does he want me to take my people? What does God want me to preach? And here's something I've learned, is that God will communicate to his people. It may not be like the book of Daniel, something written on the wall, may not be an audible voice, but God will communicate to you. And something else I've learned is that he will give witnesses, he will give testimony, he will give verification. I often tell people, if God tells you something, if you're married especially, he only has to tell one other person, and that's your spouse. And that way you know it's God, because the devil, your own emotions, will bring in division. But when you're seeking God, God will validate what you think you heard from him. It may be through several scriptures. It may be through a conversation with someone that they had no idea what you're thinking. But don't move forward until you have had validation. There's been a witness, at least one, if not two witnesses, that confirm, yes, I'm on the right track. And so that's one way. And then here's the other question. Answer both of these questions. What is in the best interest of my people? What do they most need to help them win at life? Think about it this way. Think if you go to a church conference and you go there and the speaker gets up and they're talking about, this is my ministry and this is what I want you to do to help me. And they spend the whole conference. Maybe you drove a long way. You even paid money to attend the conference. Maybe it was a state function here, and still it was a sacrifice. You had to drive and maybe stay in a motel room and all that expense. And then the whole conference was about what you could do, how you could sacrifice to help them succeed. No, you didn't go to the conference for that. You went to the conference to hear how you could win, how you could do better, how you could succeed in life. But often we turn the tables on our people. And week after week they come and they leave feeling guilty because they're not doing more for the church. They're not giving more to the church. They're not working harder for the church. And our messages, if we're not careful, are not about how to make their lives better, but how to make our lives better. And that's not the answer. If you will help, I learned this years ago, if you'll help enough people get what they need and want in life, you will automatically get what you want and need in life. And so help your people win. Ask yourself, with fear and trembling before God, what do they need to hear right now? You know, the urgent issues of our day that I've mentioned, that your parents are stressed and worried and trying to find answers for their kids, and they're worried about their kids. And maybe that is right now a good series on the doctrine of the image of God or the meaning of marriage. Maybe that's what your people need to cope and win at life. You'll have to wrestle that out with God, but make your focus, what does God want? What's his heart? And what do my people need to win right now? And if you'll do that, what you need, your heart and your passion will be taken care of. So bottom line, the one thing, don't let the urgent rule your pulpit. Stay focused on the whole counsel of God and systematically teach your people to think like Christians so that they can understand what is really going on around them and give a truly Christian response. So there you have it. The answer to what must I preach next Sunday is, what does God want? And what do my people most need to win right now? God bless you. Thank you, guys and gals, for your faithfulness. And you are much appreciated. And very seldom do we tell you like we should. And I know you people probably take it for granted too. But God bless you for your faithfulness. And I pray that you have a great weekend. We'll see you around the bend. Let's keep running to win for the gospel's sake.